kind of without warning, I was just sucked back, and it felt like I was being sucked through a tube. And then all of a sudden, I was in my body, and I was hearing my dad's voice saying, "Zach, Zach, are you okay? Are you okay?" Yeah, absolutely. So, like I was saying, I had that blood draw in the early morning time, and then my spine had collapsed. The vertebrae had fractured, and so the bones of the spine, the lower three in the lumbar spine, they had collapsed, giving me pain, and so I had to go to a kind of like a bracing. I don't even know how you would say that. A bracing um, molder. I don't even technician business. And so I was standing there as the technician was measuring my torso so that he could fit the brace appropriately so that my spine could heal. And as he was uh, doing the measurements, he was also talking to my father and my littlest brother, who was only 5 at the time, or 4 at the time. And I started getting fuzzy headed, starting to see little black dots everywhere and feeling quite weak. And it took about 30 minutes for him to do all his measurements. And as soon as he was done with them, I started to walk out of the building with my father and my brother. And my dad and this man had known each other through music, so they were just talking about music and things like that in the area that I live in. But I was rushing pretty quickly to get to his truck because I felt like I was going to pass out. So I started walking a little quicker than my dad and my brother. And as soon as I got to my dad's truck, it was locked. And so I sat on, it's just a little ledge, of a truck right where you could step on to get into the tailgate. And I sat there and bent over on my thighs with my elbows and just kind of rested. And my dad was about 40 meters away, and I looked at him, and the whole time I was walking until I got to sitting, my vision just kept narrowing. And then I looked at my dad and I said, "Dad, I'm going to pass." And as I was about to say pass out, everything went black. And immediately it was like going from black to bright, luminescent, white, goldish, silver. It was just this, this flowing white, gold, silvery color. And it was felt like a tunnel. And so I kind of looked around and was just enamored by the feeling of that the light was almost contained like a feeling of love and a feeling of peace and a feeling of joy. And yeah, and it was almost like the light was a fluid, like a liquid love that was moving around me and through me. And it really wasn't that separate from me. And I was just enamored in that space. And then I looked forward and I saw a man in what I now know to be a day coat, but I always thought of it as a trench coat. So a long trench coat down to his ankles. I immediately felt that that was my grandpa, who had died 7 years previously. He was my dad's father. And he was probably about 20 meters away, I want to say, in front of me. And I couldn't make out his face, but I could feel his presence. And I just felt like, oh, that's my grandpa. And so we had just an inaudible conversation, like a telepathic communication. And from what I remember, even though I know that he said more and that we spoke about more, But I remember him saying that everything is going to be okay. You just need to keep going. And what I was interpreting that he meant by that was that I wasn't going to die from the leukemia, that I was going to be okay. I was going to make it through it, but that I couldn't give up, that I had to keep going. And so we had that conversation, and then, you know, a bit more was said. I just can't remember. My mind can't grasp what was said, I don't think. Yeah, almost as soon as it really felt like I was in that space for an eternity. It felt like I was probably there for 1,000 years. You know, it just seemed so peaceful and so, I don't know, it just seemed like that was where I belonged. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, kind of without warning, I was just sucked back, and it felt like I was being sucked through a tube. And then all of a sudden, I was in my body, and I was hearing my dad's voice saying, Zach, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you all right? Is everything okay? And then I heard another man's voice say, do you want me to call 911? Is he okay? Do you want me to call 911? And my dad kept saying, no, he's okay. And I couldn't move my body, which was weird, but I was able to say, I can hear you, I just can't move my body. Yeah, probably about a minute or two it took for my nerve endings and my body to start tingling again. And then I was able to open my eyes and move my body, and I got up, and the man that was there was a man that had just run across the street and had seen me fall, and my dad had actually sprinted through this parking lot that 40 meters away and caught me before I had hit the ground. So we went and got some McDonald's, the most unhealthy food you could think of after an experience like that, but it helped me, and so I felt better after that. But then a few weeks passed, or a few days, few weeks, it's all pretty blurry. That was 22 years ago. So I said to my dad one day, I just wanted to tell him and said, hey, you know, Dad, in that experience, or when that happened, when I passed out, I don't want to scare you, but I saw Grandpa, Joe, my dad's dad, and he was pretty concerned. He was pretty terrified, like, oh, geez, did he say you were going to die? Was he trying to get you? You know, like, what's going to happen? And I said, no, he said everything was going to be okay, but I just had to keep going. And so a few weeks after that had passed, and I told him that I had seen him in a trench coat. And for the 7 years from the time I was born until when my grandpa died, I was 7, but I never had seen my grandpa wear a trench coat. And so my dad, a few weeks after I had told him that, brought me a picture, and he showed me this picture of when my grandpa was a young man living in Prague, Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, and it was him walking in a trench coat that same length. And that, to me, helped me rationalize that it was an experience, and that I wasn't just making it up in my own mind, that was my grandpa, and that I was going to be okay. I didn't, I thought I was only 14, and I was really dealing with, going through all that cancer treatment, all the chemotherapy and all those medications. So what I think it did was it opened something in my mind, or it opened a channel for me that allowed me to hear more of a guidance, I want to say, like a spiritual guidance, almost, I guess you could say, the voice of the divine, or angels, or whatever you want to call it, lost loved ones. But I could hear guidance from them when I was because I had, from that moment on, I had another 8 months of very intense chemotherapy, so it wasn't over with. And it was more difficult. It kept getting more and more difficult. But for me, that opened a channel to where I could hear that guidance, to know that in those moments of fear, in those moments of worry and concern, that as long as I listened to that guidance and took action based upon that guidance, that I was going to be okay, and that it would make the journey of being a human being a bit more fun. And then that was kind of a stepping stone, maybe a catalyst to then delving deeper, because 2 years after that I ended up relapsing. So I got leukemia a second time, and that second time I was experiencing more children, because it was a children's hospital, and so I was experiencing more children that were sick, and from anywhere from the age of 2 all the way to 16, like I was, and 17, and seeing their parents suffering, and them suffering, and their siblings suffering. And that experience furthered my questioning as to why these things happen in life. And I think the questions that I was asking at that time, in tandem with this channel that had been open, led me down this path of spirituality and hopefully awakening, where I had a lot more experiences, particularly out-of-body experiences, and channeling different people that I didn't know, and things like that, to help me understand that this life is quite a gift, but in the end it is just a game. It's a play. It's momentary. It's not forever, and the suffering that we experience is necessary for our spiritual growth. I was born into Catholicism, but we weren't really Catholics. We just went on holidays. I was always intrigued in mysticism since I was a kid. But my parents were fairly religious. My parents were fairly spiritual, and my grandmother, my dad's mother, she was quite spiritual, and she would always introduce me to books and things like that, which I thought were silly as a young boy. And then I had that experience, and particularly being so sick and seeing other children, like I said, when I had cancer a second time, when I saw those other children and their families and friends sick, that caused me to seek out information, and I wanted an answer to know why we are sick. Why are people suffering this deeply? And religion, when I would study religious books, the Bible and different things like that, I didn't get the answer that I was seeking. And that led me to studying other religious texts, or philosophical texts, and in the form of Buddhism and Hinduism and Zen Buddhism and Jainism, all these different kind of Eastern, that are considered Eastern religions, and also just self-help books and psychology books I was always intrigued in. And then I started to have, when I started asking those questions, I started getting answers, and I started getting more experiences. Like the very first time I meditated consciously, I was 19. And in the book that I read, the book just said, sit there for 20 minutes, put a timer on for 20 minutes, sit there just in a relaxed position and just focus on your breathing. And so I did that. I put a timer. I was in my parents' home. I put a timer on the oven, their kitchen oven, 20-minute timer. I sat down and I just closed my eyes and I started breathing. And within 5 minutes, my body was almost completely numb, and I couldn't feel my hands, I couldn't feel my feet, and I was starting to panic a little bit, freaking out. But I just kept remembering in my head, just keep breathing. That's what they say, just keep breathing, let it happen. And so once my body started getting almost completely numb, and all I could feel was my nose where the air was coming in and out, my breathing started to change. and it started getting faster. So, and it kept getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until I couldn't feel anything. And then all of a sudden I took a big breath in and I went, and then I took another big breath in, and I wasn't doing this on purpose. It was just happening. I took a big breath in, and all of a sudden I expanded, and I felt as if I was as big as my house. And then I exhaled, and I took another inhale, and I expanded to the whole city, and I exhaled, and I became inhaled, and I became the whole state, and I exhaled, and then I became the whole earth, and then I exhaled, and I became the whole galaxy, and I exhaled, and I became the whole universe, and I exhaled, and then all of a sudden my breath normalized, and I was sitting there in the middle of the universe, what it felt like, and I could feel myself extend outward as everything and nothing at all. And so that was my very first time to meditate when I was 19. And when I had that experience, and then I kind of existed like that and was just feeling myself flowing in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of everything. And then I heard this faint beeping, beep, beep, beep. And I thought, oh my gosh, my body is still in my parents' house. And so just how I expanded, I started to retract back in. So I came back into my body, and I couldn't move my body again. I was numb for 10 minutes. And I was just sitting there kind of freaking out, panicking, going, is my body going to come back on? And all of a sudden I started feeling sensation in my fingertips, in my nose, my cheeks, my toes. And then after I had that experience, I went, holy crap, what was that? And that experience really threw me on it validated that out-of-body near-death experience I had where I saw my grandpa. But it really made me think, okay, I can almost consciously do this if I just let go. If I let go and trust that everything's going to be okay, my mind will expand and my body will expand. So then I just started seeking out more and more and more information on what just happened to me and what happened to me 5 years prior. And I just kept getting more and more and more answers. And then when I get these answers, I test them out, and I would get mirroring. I would get an experience that matched what I was thinking. And so that just changed me from being a religious person, which I never really was, to a very spiritual person, which I didn't need the religious text, but it was nice to learn from Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and all these different, these sages in the Upanishads, people that had achieved a state of love and awareness and gratitude for life. And I read what they read, and then I tried to copy it. And so that turned me into a very spiritual person, where I could see truth in all of the religions, right? I like the saying that all paths lead up the same mountain. So whether you start on the east side or the west side or the north side or the south side, if you walk up the mountain with diligence, you're going to get to the top. How can we make our lives more joyful and more loving? I kind of wish that I could give that experience, and I'm sure a lot of people that have experienced something similar, whether that be out of body or near death, everyone that gift, because the experience is more than the words. But I would say to do your absolute darndest, your very, very best, and make conscious choice to find gratitude, not just in the things that are going well, but finding gratitude in the things that are not going well, which show you what you do want. And geez, Eric, you're putting me on the spot. There's a lot of things I would say. I would say that your suffering has made you stronger. Your suffering has made you understand right? Every time you were sick, you wanted more wellness, and you appreciated when you were well. Every time you were lonely and it caused you to recognize how much you enjoy company with others, good friends, good family, a partnership. And all those things in life that seem to be so difficult and hard and overwhelming, if you can find the gratitude in that they are showing you what you do want, they're the guidepost, right? It's the guidepost. If this is the bad situation, it's pointing the way to what you do want. Like, hey, this is a bad situation, but it's saying, Eric, go that way. Then, hey, your desire, what you're wanting is that direction. And I would say everyone is on this journey together. And even if people are doing very, very, very bad things to other people, to do your best to love them. I'm not a religious person, but I as you can imagine, I find myself to be deeply spiritual. And I like the quote it's in the Bible by Jesus, and he says, "One final commandment I give to you, and that is that you love each other as I have loved you." And I think that's something that I learned from this experience, is that in the end, we're all going to that place, that beautiful tunnel of joy, of love, of peace. We're all going to end up there. Regardless of who you think you are in this life, you're going to go there. And so if that's the place you're going to go, why not try to embody it while you're here? And that's a conscious practice. That's a practice when things are going bad. You go, all right, this is going bad. I'm experiencing it. I'm going to allow myself to feel the emotions that are arising from it. And then I'm going to thank it and say, thank you for showing me the direction that I now want to focus, meaning, where do I want to put my attention? Do I keep complaining about how sick I am, or how poor I am, or how lonely I am? Or do I say thank you for that? And do I then focus on letting the universe, letting the divine gift me the health, the wealth, the person, whatever it is? So I think those are things that experience opened a channel up for me to understand more of. My belief and my feeling is that every individual, my knowing is that every individual has that guidance within them, but it requires stillness and silence to hear those if for the better word, those words or that guidance. And I think guidance comes in many forms. So the guidance could come in the form of you and I having a conversation with somebody who's poor. You could be the messenger from the divine for them, saying, oh, well, if you want to become wealthier, you're obviously going to have to work, or you're going to have to feel yourself worthy. You're going to have to feel yourself wealthy. And then you may come as a teacher in the form of the divine and give them the information they're seeking. Or they may watch a video on YouTube and they get the information they're seeking. Or they may watch a movie or read a book or be told to read a book. Or they may hear something in their own ear saying, hey, you should do this, you should do that. But I don't think anyone is missing their guide. I don't think anyone is disconnected completely from their guidance, meaning like if you plug it in, they're always going to plug in. But I think many people can kind of pull out their cord, so they're just hanging out right there, where all they have to do is kind of push that cord into the outlet, and you put it in an outlet. They're just pulling themselves out, and they're doing that by virtue of their own thoughts, their own words, and their own actions. So when you connect, and I think that's why meditation is so important, because that stillness inside stills that inner voice that sometimes can be detrimental. And so when meditation or in a practice that, Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga or something that helps us running, something that helps us still the mind. Eventually that voice, that stream of well-being, right, Eric? My belief is that there is a stream of well-being, a stream of goodness, that an energy that flows in every human being. And the only reason that we don't remain healthy, we don't remain happy, we don't remain joyful, is because we are thinking thoughts that are not in alignment with that stream of well-being. I don't know how to explain that. Your soul is eternally good. That's how I would say this. Your soul is eternally good. And there may be people that disagree with me. That's what I firmly believe out of my experience, is that each and every individual soul is good. And that the human being in their mind and in their body can disconnect from that. And that is when we get illness, and that is when we get poverty, and that is when we get loneliness and negative emotion. So finding a way to just think thoughts, and it just comes with thoughts, because I could say, Eric, you're such a handsome young man. You're very kind, you have a great smile, right? And that makes you feel good. To me, that's alignment with your soul. I'm telling you something that your soul already knows, and so you're in alignment and you feel good, you're connected. But when I say, Eric, you don't seem like a very nice person, you seem pretty mean, pretty harsh, that feels bad, and then that's me just pulling that apart. But it's ultimately you acknowledging the thought that I am sending you through my word. That's very fluffy, it's very wordy. I don't know, that's a very wordy way to say that. I do believe that most of the things our bodies experience are a result of communication from our inner beings or our higher self trying to get our attention. I do believe that fully, and I don't think it's always fair because we're not always aware of what's happening. If your knee hurts, you don't realize that it's your inner being telling you to keep walking on the path that you've asked for. Or your back pain, if you have back pain and you're feeling that you can't support, everybody, you have too much on your shoulders weighing you down, and you don't have any support to help you, and you need some support. There's things like that I do believe in. But cancer, I think cancer is deeply tied to rage and anger. So I think that our bodies hold that that emotion in our body somewhere. So meditation will help with us acknowledging that area in the body, and then maybe getting some signs or guidance to help work that out and to let those old patterns go. So keep meditating. Secondly, meditation is a practice. And so in order to get better at it, you have to practice. It's not a thing that's just going to happen. You don't just become a great athlete or a great musician or a great teacher by doing it one time and then you're great at it. You practice it. Every single one of us, when we were born, we couldn't walk. None of us could walk. But we kept getting up as little babies and standing up and trying, and we kept doing our best. And now all of us walk upright because we kept doing our best and trying. And so with meditation, it's the same thing. You will always have thoughts in your head. I've been meditating virtually daily for 17 years. And there are days where I still have thoughts rummaging through my brain, and I can't just let go and completely empty myself.